Hey everyone, welcome to the Workin' Dirt channel. I'm Joel. In today's video, part 3 of 4 in the video series, how to install a vinyl plank flooring in your home. I'm going to show you some tips and tricks on how to click in your flooring in tougher situations. And I'll also show you how to make some measurements and cuts in some harder situations as well. So roll up those sleeves and let's get dirty. Okay, I'm going to show you how we're installing this vinyl plank flooring by LifeProof, but the way we're doing it here is not the same you do for all other brands. It's similar, but always check your installation instructions. So the first thing you want to do is double check your grooves, make sure they're all clean, because one little piece of sawdust can ruin your day by your seam not coming together. So ours looks good here, and we're just going to line it up on the back on top of the groove of this board and set it in. Make sure it goes in all the way. Make sure we're butted up to the last board. And then once we're good there, we're going to give it a little tap to make sure we're in there. And then using our non-marring hammer, we're going to lock in that seam. So, and then for extra insurance, sometimes I like to still go back. It. Now, the most important part is double checking and looking and making sure your seam is in fact closed. Sometimes it'll look closed, but it's not when you look up close, especially when you have a coarse grain pattern like this. So always double check. Now, tapping the planks in, you got to be very careful because you do not want to put too much energy or force into a small area because you can chip it. So when you're placing your tap blocks, there's all types of tap blocks. There's this one, which has a groove on both sides, has different stepped grooves. And the most important thing to know is that you just want the flat side of that groove to be flat up against the face of your laminate. So this one can actually sit on top like this. So you just slide it over and then boom. And then it's actually set up against the wall of the edge of this vinyl piece right here. So now that you're there, now you can tap it, and nothing crazy. In fact, lighter, smaller taps usually work most of the time and are perfect. If you do it too much on one spot and too little here, you can have issues if you don't have a good support system behind the whole floor. So be easy and make sure you do not crunch the tongue. It's easy to start putting something in the wrong spot, or you put a tap block on angle and then it crunches your tongue. So be very careful of your tongue. So these are one of the tricky scenarios that you have to cut around when you're installing the floor, and sometimes if you can prevent it, you'd like to start your row so that you end with one board halfway on your jamb, so that you can make just an L notch on your board, and then your next board over here would just have an L notch. But other times you can't prevent it, so like right now, so what you want to do is trim your casing like we showed you before on both sides, so that this piece can slide in on one groove. So it'll be tapped in this way and it'll be sliding in this groove, locked in, sliding in. But now connecting to this groove is going to be hard because most of the time you need to be at a slant for it to lock in. But with a little finesse and muscling, you can get it to lock in sometimes. But if not, then you would be prepared to just use your utility knife and cut your casing off your door, peel it off, so that now you can flop your piece down and then reinstall your casing. But if you can avoid it, then you will at least try to do that. So the other thing I failed to mention is a handy speed square and a vacuum. You want to be meticulous about keeping your floor clean, sweeping and vacuuming as often as possible so that you don't get crumbs underneath or in your grooves. So now to mark this U, you can use a measure tape and transfer measurements to your board, or put your board in place as if it's going to go in touching your last board, and then look at where it's going to slide in and put a mark where the wall is. So we're going to put a mark there and a mark here. So that's going to be our wall. Let's double check. 2 marks, and now once we have that mark, then we can use our speed square to transfer. Let me show you. Transfer your line down, but then you're probably going to wonder, all right, well, how far down do we go? And so that, what you do is take your measuring tape and then measure from the surface edge of your last piece right here to the front of your jamb, and it looks like it's 5 3/4, maybe another 16th, 5 13/16. So then you're going to come down 5 13/16 right here, and that'll be the distance. I should have just marked it. There you go. That we come down. All right. So then, now remember, measure twice, cut once. Now, if you're really comfortable, you don't have to use tape, but tape gives you a little extra insurance. If you messed up your drawing, you can do it again. And I'm going to measure twice, cut once, so we're going to double check here. And as you see, I'm measuring from here to there because I'm going to try to slide it under this piece that I cut out as well to tuck it. So now we go to cut and we come back and try. Use your jigsaw to cut out this whole U part. I wouldn't recommend this unless you're very comfortable. It's not the safest way to do it, but now that we have those 2 cuts, it just saves us a little time. And now we'll use our jigsaw to cut the last line out. This is the tricky move right here. And one thing we can do is if we can get this at this slant at all, it'll help this go in that way. So what we'll try to do is so I've got this angled up a little bit. It's slanted up. Now we're going to make sure we have. I have to take out. I think I'm up against this. It's important to inspect it. Yeah. So it's going okay, except I have to take just a little more right here, so it'll go in. Because I'm a little back. Non-marring fist hammer. Now, you can always use your measuring tape to measure different pieces that you need to cut, but whenever you can, it's easier and faster to put your board in the position it's going to go in and mark your boundaries. So in this case, our flooring is going to stop at the edge of this linoleum. So I put it on the edge that I don't click it in, I just put it on the edge here, and then I can put a mark right here where I'm going to cut it. And And then right here, obviously we got a notch for this little spot that goes around the wall. So to transfer that straight line, just use your handy little T-square and make a mark there. And so now by a method of a projection of lines, we got one more mark to make, and I'll show you that when we come back here, because this is going to get cut off right here where we marked at the green linoleum. And I'm marking this just to show you here. So this is going to get cut off, and once I cut that off, then we are going to make the line that's going to L notch around this wall. Alright, so now that we've cut the board to length and we made our knot, or our little line of where the wall is right here, now we need to know how far the wall comes in to make this little L notch. So what you do is you line your board up now with this existing board, nice and parallel. You can even put a straight edge up against it, make sure you're nice and straight. Now we know, okay, now we can mark this side. And once you mark it, now you can connect it and you can go jigsaw it. So now we cut that little piece out, and then your base molding will cover all your edges. When you get into the finish line of your project, it will require you to pull in your last boards using a pull bar. And the way this works is we have a piece right here that we ripped on the table saw to fit right between the cabinet and the floor, but it still needs to be clipped in, but we obviously don't have room to tap it, so we need to use a pull bar to push in there. So when you cut your piece, you want to cut it with just enough room to fit your pull bar behind it. So there you go. And as you can see, this pull bar got plenty of use. It's pretty bent. Now there's felt pads under this, but I still like to take extra precaution and use something else, which is another piece of flooring to protect. And once you got it lined up on your edge seam here and it looks like it's in place, the next thing you need to do to also give you just a little advantage is you want that board tilted just ever so slightly to help dig into that groove. So you can use your little pry bar and get in there and kind of just wiggle it and get it up. And then another trick too, you can use your pull bar and go sideways, and that'll put pressure pulling it back. So sometimes that will engage it, and you can start it with that. And it's not one to do it on this. There we go. Yep, it went in a little bit, see? There we go. So I hear a little click, a little clickety clack. There we go. And I wiggled it, and I'm actually just wiggling and pulling, and that's doing it itself. Now, if you use a normal finish hammer, your typical metal hammer, that's a little smaller to fit in this area, and it gives you a little more clinking, a little more force. Best of all, it gives you the room. All right. So there we go. Now the last thing we have is this seam. We've locked this one in, now we need to lock this one in. So you'll use your non-marring hammer, hit it down, or you can put a nice flat non-marring block on top, your tapping block, and snap in your seam. Now not all floors can snap in exactly this way, so you'll want to look at your installation instructions, but this LifeProof does. You can hit it right on top, and it will lock your seam in. So there we have it, the use of your pry bar. Alright folks, I hope after watching this now, you guys are feeling a little more comfortable about making some fancy cuts. Now I know there's all types of situations where other cutting techniques might need to be shown, but I will have to save those for later videos. But one thing I will mention is that feel free to take a piece of plywood or something thin and making measurements and cuts to fit around the door jamb before you get started on your actual flooring, so you get used to your measuring and cutting. And the other thing, when you're trying to use your tap locks and tapping your flooring, feel free to get nice and close and like see how the tap lock touches the edge of your flooring. Make sure it actually makes a nice flush contact and it's not sitting on top of your flange and too high. You'll know if it's making a nice contact, and the reason why is because some brands don't match up well with certain flooring. So double check that, don't take it for granted. And I think that about wraps it up for this one. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below, and we'll see you at part 4. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you again.